Hello. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. Check the kick, Sherdog.com. I'm the host. I know I took a week off. I'm sorry. I went on a little trip and I was out of town and I did not have my recording stuff with me, and I could have rushed home and scrambled and put something together last minute. But I don't like to do that. I like to do a little bit of tape study, a little bit of my homework before I just hop on and start blasting stuff off. So I apologize for the week off, but we are back. There is a lot to talk about off this weekend. Even though there was no UFC, I'm still excited to talk to you guys about this weekend. And then we got the upcoming weekend. We have Beneil Dariush fighting Arman Tsarukyan. Dariush coming back off a pretty bad loss. We'll see what he's got. We're just going to go ahead and hop right into it. PFL 2023 championships, a lot of winners. I'm going to talk about each fight. I don't have time to go into extreme depth about everything. Jesus Pinedo wins the featherweight championship with a very awesome story, a Rocky-like story. And there was a couple winners from the season that, they don't win. They get a check for $1 million, but it's $1 million of overall earnings through the tournament. And I think, maybe they make $500,000 up through their first couple fights, and then they're guaranteed another $500,000. Whatever. I don't know what the structure is, and it may be different for each fighter. If you guys know, shoot it in, because I don't know how their payments are structured. But I know by the end of the season they do get $1 million in total for all their fights. Jesus Pinedo lost a split decision against Gabriel Braga in the very opening part of the tournament. Loses, something happens. Brendan Loughnan's, mind you, Brendan Loughnane won the 2022 PFL Championship. So he was the number one seed going back into this 2023 season. Brendan Loughnane, everyone knows who he is. Multiple fight vet. Fought in the Contender Series. Dana White famously declined him in the first season for not wanting to finish a fight. Since then, times have changed, and Brendan Loughnane would definitely get a contract if you were to win a fight this year in the Contender Series. It's either here nor there. Jesus Pinedo steps in to fight Brendan Loughnane, the number one seed, on short notice, misses weight, has to cut his hair. Only way that he can move on to the next step of the tournament, the next leg of the tournament, was to win via finish. I think he needed to be in the first round as well. Goes out there and knees Brendan Loughnane's head off. And he is like correct me if I'm wrong, and I didn't pull these odds, but he was like in the plus thousands to win, especially that way. Huge upset, knocks out the number one seed on days notice, and then he's reinserted right back into the tournament. And then he goes and fights Bubba Jenkins, who he was a pretty big underdog against, and who was also like the number 1-2 seed to win the tournament. Goes out there and beats the shit out of Brendan Loughnane. Against Bubba Jenkins. And it's like, man, this guy Pinedo is making moves. Then he moves all the way into the title fight, gets matched up against the guy that he lost to, Gabriel Braga, via split decision, goes out there and stops him in the third round. You could definitely, if you're a Jesus Pinedo fan, you're happy with the stoppage, but that most people were upset with the stoppage. Could have been a little early. Jesus Pinedo hits Braga with this like nice little shovel uppercut, kind of how Sergey Pavlovich throws stuff up and through the center, cuts an angle, hits him with this uppercut, and then finishes with another jump knee. And fight gets stopped. Braga was, it was definitely probably early. Either way, Braga was on his way. He was down 2 rounds and then going to be down the third round anyway. So even if the fight would have continued, say he would have survived, maybe Pinedo gets a 10-8 there or a 10-9, and then Braga would have needed to finish the fight in the next 2 rounds. And it just wasn't trending that way. Pinedo was very smart using his outside footwork. He kind of got kicked up. Braga's known to be a major kicker. Look what he did to Marlon Moraes. And he's known to be a good leg kicker. Pinedo definitely used his footwork, stayed on the outside. Braga got on the front foot a lot in this fight, but Pinedo was just vicious with his combination punching. He throws good knees. He has good power. He's willing to take a hit to give a hit, and he looked great. And I'm really happy for him. He's the first Peruvian MMA champion in a major organization, so that's really, really big. We have guys like Enrique Barzola over in Bellator, stuff like that. Those dudes are not doing what Pinedo just did. Rocky story, very, very incredible win from him. And I'm going to talk about two PFL fights, and then we'll kind of breeze through everything just because they're both have a very similar story. Impa Kasanganay, dude comes up, he's fought at 170, comes up 2 weight classes and kind of starts kicking things off at 205. He defeats Josh Silveira via decision, 50-45 unanimous. And he kind of just kicked the shit out of Josh Silveira. Silveira had a couple moments in the striking. Impa's body punching looked good. His angle cutting looked good. His combinations looked good. He hurt Silveira multiple times. Impa's making a lot of improvements. He held his own on the ground against a guy that, Josh Silveira comes from a major team. His dad is one of the head coaches at ATT. So this dude, it's not like this dude is not surrounded by good dudes. I know he's one of Johnny Eblin's main training partners out there. And Impa just kind of pitched a shutout. He just kind of whipped Josh Silveira's ass. And he was a favorite. Some people from the Sherdog Slack were saying, I don't really understand why Impa's a favorite. And I kind of agreed. I was just like, man, but look at Impa making his run after getting violently knocked out by Joaquin Buckley with that crazy. Joaquin gets his kick caught and then kind of does this crazy jumping, spinning kick to destroy Impa, and it was like the most viral knockout in the history of MMA. And this dude was like sleeping in his car after that, and his parents told him, come home, we'll take care of you. And he said, no, I'm not giving up on my dream. I'm gonna move up to 205 and just beat the shit out of people. Like, Impa had some performances on this just through this tournament that were super impressive. It's crazy because they made this dude fight on the Challenger Series, so they kind of put him through another like Dana White Contender Series thing, but he won that one arm triangle, decision, and then came and beat Tim Karen via arm triangle. And then the knockout against Martin Hamlet was super impressive. How he went to the body and then came up over the top. And then his boxing has just improved. His angle cutting has improved. He's a good body puncher. He's committed. He doesn't get tired. He wasn't breathing heavy at all. He can wrestle. He can strike now. He's pretty durable, and he's very, very motivated. And that's one of those things where, motivation for certain guys, especially guys like Impa, definitely can play a huge factor. Shout out to him. Awesome fucking win from Impa Kasanganay. And what a story. Two guys that were the underdogs, and, most people would have quit under their circumstances. And Impa Kasanganay and Jesus Pinedo both, not just victorious, but impressive, victorious, and showing tons of heart and a true fighting spirit. Moving on to the rest of the card. A lot of pretty impressive performances. Derek Brunson fought a sad-looking Ray Cooper and still got hurt and almost knocked out. He had the high single against Ray Cooper, and Ray Cooper was posted and balancing on one leg and was still able to hurt Derek Brunson. This fight sucked. Ray Cooper missed weight. This ended up being at a catch weight. Ray Cooper, the dude must have won too much money to where he just doesn't give a shit anymore. Like, he just doesn't care. If I cared that little about my job, I would have been fired a long time ago. For Ray Cooper to show up and fight the way he did, he just got out-wrestled and out-grappled late on. There's no elbows in the PFL, which is, they need to do something about that. These championship fights should have elbows, and it's kind of stupid that they don't. It's just kind of watching, it's almost like MMA with training wheels. You can push kick someone in the knee and hyperextend their leg and blow their leg up, but you can't hit them with elbows. In the championships, that's it. This is it. It's fighting for $1 million. throw some elbows in there. You don't see many doctor stoppages in PFL unless it's, due to like a groin shot or an eye poke, but you don't see like impactful damage stop. So maybe, and I know that they want these fighters to turn around and fight quick. So it makes sense. You get your eyebrow exploded open via elbow and you probably can't fight again here in a month and a half. But for the championships, let them throw fucking elbows. Kayla Harrison defeats Aspen Ladd. That was a short notice catchweight fight. Not much to talk about. Aspen had a couple tiny moments on the feet, but after Kayla Harrison's last performance against Larissa Pacheco and even Aspen, I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't get the Kayla Harrison thing. She's fighting in a non-existent division. She called out, I think it was a subtle call out for Cyborg, but I'd honestly rather watch Larissa Pacheco fight Cyborg. But yeah, I'm not too sure because Kayla Harrison talks about retirement. She didn't fight in the season. She wants like these big money fights. Not too sure what they'll do with her. Maybe they'll book her in a fight against like Clarissa Shields, or I'm not extremely well versed in women's boxing, but that other woman that got brought over to the PFL, or even Amanda Serrano's in the PFL, maybe she'll fight like one of those boxing girls, which would just be, in my opinion, a waste of one of these bigger name boxing girls, but whatever. We talked about Impa. Magomed Karamov defeats Saribu C via submission guillotine choke. This was actually really dope. The commentary was really cracking me up during this fight. They were talking about how Magomed didn't really get his wrestling going, and Saribu definitely did up his takedown defense, but I put into the Sherdog Slack, I was like, I don't think the commentary is aware that Magomed Karamov doesn't need ground control to win this fight. He's kind of boxing Saribu up, hurting him. He hurt him with a body shot originally, and that's what started this guillotine. He had Saribu, the striker, shooting, and he was hurt. Magomed Karamov just kind of walked him down and punched him really hard. Like, that's how this fight went. It was kind of interesting that the commentary was just, in my opinion, totally off with it too. It was one of these kind of funnier. The commentary just didn't get it right. Magomed Karamov won in 2018, and he's back in 23, 5 years later. Made the milli. I know he had visa issues, all those things, but he's back and he's fun. And they had him face off against Jason Jackson. That could be dope. But Jason Jackson, I'm saying, like, look what he did to Amasov. Maybe he's one of the best welterweights in the world. And then I saw a clip of him wrestling with grappling at Killcliff with Shavkat Rakhmonov, and he was shooting takedowns on Rakhmonov, and Rakhmonov was just stuffing him and was able to get a big slam on him. So I don't know. It's just wrestling, and yeah, whatever. I would love to see him fight Jason Jackson. That's what I'm getting at. Larissa Pacheco gets another win. Not much to talk about there. She probably should have finished this fight, but Marino was really, really tough. Renan Ferreira defeats Dennis Goltsov via TKO. He was an underdog. Renan Ferreira is a super athletic, giant Brazilian heavyweight. He's got big power, super long reach. I'd love to see him in a fight with Francis Ngannou, even though it'll never happen because Francis Ngannou will never fight in MMA. But it's a potential, and it's something there for the PFL. He's another giant, scary dude. OAM defeats Clay Collard, 49-46 all around on those scorecards. That fight kind of sucked. It's just, I feel bad for Clay Collard because Clay Collard's never in a bad fight. You go to his social media, he's got like 15,000 followers. He's a guy that through COVID, I actually watched him get knocked the fuck out like 2 Christmases ago with my uncle. During Christmas dinner, we walked out to his shop. He's got a really cool bar, in a shop. And it's Christmas, and my uncle lives up in the mountains in North Idaho. So we're at his house, and he's like, let's go up to the shop. Okay, cool. We walk up to the shop. He's got like a fireplace in there, a bar, big TV. So it's just him and I were chilling. He throws ESPN on. There's boxing, the Christmas evening boxing. And I'm like, oh my God, look, it's Clay Collard. And then he gets knocked out by some Cuban dude. But Clay Collard's always in fun fights. OAM is, I mean, he had fun fights this season in PFL, but usually they're stinkers. It's funny because we're going to talk about Arman Tsarukyan and his last fight in the UFC. He lost to Arman Tsarukyan. That's OAM. Clay Collard had a small stint in the UFC, but Clay Collard is such a fun fighter. He like almost body punches too much. It's funny because in a world where the world we live in MMA, where not enough people punch the body, Clay Collard will always punch the body, and it's just great. The fourth round, he had OAM eyes wide open, looking like he saw a ghost, like, oh shit, this guy's still here. He survived all of OAM's grappling, and it was really turning in the fifth round. Like, man, then OAM snuck in that takedown, had that back control, and Clay Collard just, he's not a good enough defensive grappler to have. Clay Collard's kind of like a B grade version of Dustin Poirier in a way where, like, you make him go out there and fight all these strikers, these striker first guys, and he's going to have a lot of success. And he might get hurt. He might lose a fight here and there, but he's got that same, kind of lack of wrestling, and against certain guys can be compromised. I think I'd probably pick Dustin Poirier to beat someone like OAM, but that's why I call Clay Collard kind of the B grade version of Dustin Poirier. Loves to box, loves to strike, super tough, will leg kick depending, will also get chewed up by leg kicks depending, but he's like a fighter, and OAM he's a fighter as well. He'll get down and dirty, but he's not a fighter. He's not a man dance, Sean Strickland type of guy like Clay Collard is. And you like to see those kind of dudes succeed. But at 155, Clay Collard's game, he's, maybe if OAM decides to leave, Clay Collard will have a chance, and it looks like it, but OAM might stay around, might think, hell, I'll just make another $1 million and beat all these dudes again. That's a problem with PFL. Is they just don't have a wide enough roster, and what they're doing, they've absorbed really quick. Shout out to OAM. Moving on, they've absorbed Bellator. They bought Bellator. I haven't talked about this, and they're doing all these stupid events where they're like still allowing Bellator to run, and it's like, yeah, we let Bellator run, and they kind of ran it into the ground. That's why you guys bought them. But PFL will never be profitable. They'll just hemorrhage money forever, which is fine. They have investors and they can afford to do that. But they're doing all this weird, like, just combine the rosters and have a PFL tournament champion and then a PFL regular champion, a weight class champion, and then you can make them fight each other. Do what the UFC's doing. Create tons of fucking titles and create tons of title fights and gain a bunch of traction as your kickoff. Like, they had some face-offs, and it seemed like it's the way that the post-fight production for the PFL was very interesting. It seemed like they were like, the night before the fights, they called all these Bellator fighters and like, you guys want a plane ticket? Are you available? They did. They like interviewed Magomed Karamov. They did the standoff between Jason Jackson and Magomed Karamov. I believe it was them. But then they made Jason Jackson just stand there for Magomed's whole entire interview. They should have done the interview, done the face-off. At the end of the interview, you bring in, let Magomed Karamov say whatever, bring him in, do the face-off, and then the camera pans out while they're still facing off in the ring, and it creates dramatic effect. No, PFL just fucking screw the pooch. Their production, not good. Their smart cage, and not that smart, I guess. But Don Davis went on Ariel Helwani's show talking about all these, if you don't like the PFL season format, it's the hardest thing in sports. It's probably pretty fucking hard. Won't deny that. Cutting weight and showing up for an MMA fight, even though there's no elbows involved a bunch of times in a year. Yeah, it's got to be real freaking hard. But I say you do Grand Prix, and you have a certain amount of fighters in your Grand Prix, and then if you UFC, for example, their 155 division is stacked enough where guys like Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira wouldn't fight in a 155 pound tournament. They're two big names. They'll just fight for titles. But dudes like Arman Tsarukyan, Gamrot, Bobby Green, Terrence McKinney, who's not even in the rankings picture, but he's a guy. Benoit Saint Denis, even Jalin Turner, Dan Hooker, these guys would fight in a tournament. They would totally fight in a tournament. And if a tournament had a tournament championship at the end, where if they won that, then they could go fight the real champ. Yeah, tons of young fighters would do that to get a name. So I don't understand why PFL is not going to do that. They're also not going to have a bantamweight or a middleweight. But they should definitely have bantamweight, because Bellator's bantamweight is very, very good. Patchy Mix would probably beat Sean O'Malley in a fight if Sean O'Malley or Patchy Mix next fights were booked against each other. I'm picking Patchy Mix to win that. He'd have problems against guys like Merab Dvalishvili and maybe a Petroyan, someone like that, or Aljamain or Henry Cejudo. But like, fuck, the Sergio Pettis, these dudes are fucking good. Even Rafael Stotts, Danny Sabatello, would love to see those dudes. Like, yeah. So now the UFC's in 2 years, the UFC's bantamweight division might be real good if they don't decide. Oh no, sorry about that. On my monitor here. Yeah, I'm just curious why, and I know I'm going on a rant about bantamweight, but I'm just very curious to see why PFL doesn't open those divisions or what they're going to do with those divisions. All in all, that's it for PFL. 23 and a half minutes or so about them. Tell me what you guys thought about the card. A little bit of boxing coming up next. David Benavidez. Let's talk about it. Moving on to a fight that was pretty fun, and it's not MMA. Boxing, we have David Benavidez beating Demetrius Andrade via corner stoppage after the 6th round, which was... Demetrius Andrade had a lot of success against David Benavidez through the first 3 rounds of this fight, where his combination punching looked great, his movement looked great. He was even kind of, even though the smaller guy, kind of pushing Benavidez up against the cage, tying him up, using some dirty boxing. His combination punching looked really, really good, and arguably could have scored the first 3 rounds for him, kind of pretty easy. But David Benavidez is a guy that he has a very good chin. A couple times his head even got snapped back by Andrade during these combinations that he was landing on him. But eventually David Benavidez just finds a small chink in your armor, lands an overhand, bounces it right off Demetrius Andrade's eye, drops him to the ground. I think that's his 3rd time ever being dropped in his career. Mind you, he's undefeated coming into this, and gets dropped. And then after that, the fight kind of changed completely, and Benavidez definitely started, using the momentum and hurt him a bunch. And it looked like it was a mixture of David Benavidez's big power and combination punching of his own, parlayed with Andrade just kind of getting gassed out, fighting the bigger guy and trying to muscle around a bigger guy. Andrade has had this problem. His whole career, where he's more of he can definitely win the first 4, 5, 6 rounds of a fight, and then he'll start to gas out and get sloppy. Benavidez did not look good for the first few rounds of this fight, and he does make his reads. He's definitely a building fighter, but what if that's Canelo, a guy that is big, durable, can combination punch, and doesn't get tired? Canelo's volume has definitely dropped off a lot. And Caleb Plant also had tons of success against Benavidez until he got hit to the body. I like David Benavidez. He is definitely a monster, just like his nickname. But he's a guy that, man, there's gonna be somebody that can do what Demetrius Andrade did to him for 7 rounds. If someone does that to him for 7 rounds and just doesn't get hurt, that's probably the way to beat a guy like David Benavidez. Just go out there and stomp on the gas, throw a bunch of combinations, because Benavidez will rely on his pretty good defense and his durability, and he'll just kind of roll and not get too buzzed up from punches. But man, someone that can just stick it out there. A guy like Canelo could do that. Huge win for him. He moves on, still undefeated, gives Andrade his first loss in his professional boxing career. And David Benavidez called out Canelo. He said, look, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I mean, saying I didn't like the way he looked through the first 3 rounds, he looked great. Everything outside of that, he could pose a lot of threats to someone like Canelo. He's huge. He's a power puncher. He's tough as fuck. And if just because it's probably not going to happen doesn't mean that we as fans can't want it. And I would love to see him fight Canelo. He's only 26. Yeah, just very interesting. His older brother also fought one of the Charlo brothers the fight before him, and he kind of got beat up. Whatever. Charlo was coming back after a couple-year layoff. I had my eye on this one. I thought it was going to be an interesting fight for Benavidez, and all in all, he won. Andrade's corner did not let him go out for the 7th round. He was getting beat up. He was tired anyway, and it was MMA just needs to do this type of thing more, where there comes to a point where fights become unwinnable, and that's where he was at. Benavidez was rolling. There was still 6 more rounds after this fight, and maybe Andrade could have hung tough for 2 or 3. Andrade could have hung tough for 2 or 3, 4 more rounds, but the amount of damage he would have taken from Benavidez at that point would have just been asinine. Glad his corner stopped the fight. All right, guys, that's the end of the first segment of the show. No middle segment. There's some news, but I don't want to get into the Ian Gary stuff or the Johnny Walker allegation stuff. That's just not my style. Is it funny? A little bit for Ian Gary. He may or may not deserve the attention he's getting. Johnny Walker, don't want to talk about it. If it's true, he's a piece of shit. If it's not true, what does that Toronto girl say? Whatever. If it's not true, I hope it's not true about Johnny Walker. And if it's true, again, he's a piece of shit. Moving on to good fights, good topics. We got UFC on ESPN 52, UFC Vegas 3,946. No idea what the number is. Hard to keep up with the UFC Fight Night numbers. Sherdog has it as UFC ESPN 52. Dariush versus Tsarukyan. We have Benail Dariush returning after a pretty violent loss to Charles Oliveira, coming back to fighting the streaking, my number 1 pick, my only pick for the men's lightweight division for the Sherdog MMA fantasy matching that we did. Kind of hyped on this one here, guys. I think it'll be a good fight. We have Arman Tsarukyan coming in as a pretty big favorite, minus 278. Benail Dariush coming back at plus 225. I don't love those odds, but I kind of understand them. Benail Dariush did not look that great. Did get a takedown and some control on Charles Oliveira, but anyone that wants to do that kind of can. Charles Oliveira welcomes it. He got swept and then head kicked and punched a ton and got knocked the F out. Before that, he had a really impressive performance against Matheus Gamrot, and then he had the unanimous decision win against Tony Ferguson. Diego Ferreira via split decision. Scott Holtzman with that cool spinning back fist. And what started, what it didn't. He's been on a run. Benail Dariush was on a big run until he lost to Charles Oliveira, and he was a favorite going into that fight too. Kind of crazy the way it looked, but he got knocked out by Alexander Hernandez, beat Thiago Moises, armbar Drew Dober, rear naked choke Frank Camacho, the legend Frank Camacho, and then had the crazy knockout against Drakkar Klose. The spinning back fist against Scott Holtzman, Diego Ferreira, Tony Ferguson, Gamrot, and then he lost to Charles Oliveira, and in such a way to where Arman has come back as a pretty big favorite. Arman is a guy that he had a loss to Gamrot back in 2022. I've watched that fight a couple times. I think Gamrot lost that fight. I think Arman won. The finish against Joel Alvarez, violent. The finish against Giagos, violent. The unanimous decision win against Matt Favola, that's a good win. Davi Ramos, another great win. OAM, great win. His loss to Islam Makhachev might be like his most impressive performance in the UFC. Came in on short notice and had a very close fight with Makhachev. Since then, did beat Damir Ismagulov and Joaquim Silva. Joaquim Silva also fights in this card. Yes, he got hurt in that fight, but he ended up winning via third round TKO. this is a fight where Beneil Dariush on his right day is always going to be a very, very tough fight for anyone in this division. He can hit really hard. He's semi-durable. Great BJJ. Good grappling, good top pressure. He's kind of like the Glover Teixeira of 155. He's got great top control, can be damaging from the top, has good submissions, accredited BJJ black belt, multiple time world champion in that world. Against a guy like Tsarukyan. Tsarukyan is a guy that is the epitome of a wrestle boxer. Great wrestling, great top control, vicious ground and pound. Look what he did to Joel Alvarez. Good elbows, good takedowns, quick, great chain wrestling, great scrambling, decent submissions, decent boxing, good power, great athleticism, great speed. Got youth on his side in this fight too. I think this is a risky fight for him because Beneil can almost match him everywhere. I think Arman's going to be a much faster athlete out of them two. I think Arman is much more of a straight puncher than Beneil, but on the ground, Arman is very good on the ground, but so is Beneil Dariush. It's a very hard fight to pick. I think I lean Arman Tsarukyan in this fight. I very on the fence though. I'm very, very on the fence. I'm just curious to see if someone like Dariush can hurt Arman because Arman was hurt in his last fight. I'm also curious to see if someone like Arman can hang on the ground with Dariush. Curious to see what the grappling looks like there, to see if Arman will be wanting to take this fight to the ground or if he just wants to have a kickboxing fight with Dariush. Dariush can definitely clip him up just the way he did against Joaquim Silva, but I think Arman is just a little bit more of a nip-tuck fighter and can be a little bit more technical everywhere. He's also growing. He's 27 years old. Comes from a good camp. He's very good. He's very technical. This kid will fight for a belt. I'm going to go with Arman Tsarukyan. I think he is just going to be the straighter puncher on the feet and could potentially hurt Dariush. Beneil Dariush has a tendency to get hurt in the first rounds of fights and has a tendency to brawl with people. And I think Arman can maybe even mix in some wrestling and get some top control here and definitely scramble with Dariush. But I think just him using his technical boxing and kickboxing and just straight punches is what's going to win him this fight. We started with the main event. We're going to move down the card this time. We've got Bobby Green taking on the short notice opponent in Jalin Turner. Bobby Green was supposed to be matched up with Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker actually re-broke his arm, or it never healed all the way and definitely got re-broken. And this did happen against Jalin Turner. And where he blocked a head kick. I mean, Dan Hooker is just a fucking G. That fight was awesome. But Jalin Turner is also great. I'm curious. This fight is supposed to be at 155. Curious to see if Jalin Turner has any issues making weight. If Jalin Turner misses weight, he's probably more likely to win this fight. He missed weight his last time out. I was pretty certain Jalin Turner was going to go up to welterweight. I know he debuted against Vicente Luque at welterweight. Maybe didn't debut, but I know he took a fight against Luque. Timeline's a little bit mixed up. But yeah, if he makes weight and he depletes himself, because Jalin Turner's huge, I'm surprised they called him. I thought they might have called, and maybe they did call him, but this was the person that Bobby Green picked. Maybe they did call Benoit Saint Denis. Maybe, I know Terrence McKinney was blowing his horn so he could try to get this fight, but it's Jalin Turner versus Bobby Green. Bobby Green is an older guy coming off of a great knockout win against Grant Dawson. 1 round, 33 seconds in. Prior to that, he kind of beat the shit out of Tony Ferguson, which was a sad fight. The no contest against Jared Gordon, he wasn't looking that great in there, but had a lot of success against Jared Gordon. The knockout to Drew Dober, he was kind of beating Drew Dober's butt through the first round there. Bobby Green's a G. I don't need to go through his record with you guys. his loss against Rafael Fiziev is one of his best performances in the UFC. I think he actually beat Fiziev. The third round clearly beat him. Definitely had a lot of success in the second round. Looks great. Jalin Turner is a guy that he's highly skilled, super dangerous. Kind of has some wrestling deficiencies, and Matt Frivola was able to expose that in the past. He lost via split decision to Gamrot, and then lost via split decision to Dan Hooker. Both of those fights could have also gone either way, and a lot of people thought he did beat Dan Hooker. I'm not mad. It was very, very close. Dan Hooker has somehow he's won fights like this against Paul Felder. I remember when he fought Paul Felder in New Zealand, and I was like, man, Paul Felder got screwed there. But Jalin Turner's got a good record. That club and sub over Brad Riddell was super, super impressive. The knockout against Jamie Malarkey, the rear naked choke against Uros Medic. He beat the crap out of Brock Weaver on short notice. The knockout against Kulibao, a knockout against Callum Potter. He did again get knocked out against Vicente Luque. That was his UFC debut, so I was correct there. This is a tough fight for someone like Bobby Green. If this fight has if this fight starts the third round, Bobby Green could have a lot of success here because Bobby Green is a great 3-round fighter. He has good cardio, great boxing defense. He is a big time, hands down, head movement, shoulder roll, switches stance, can even get squared up and kind of throw things from both stances. That's how he knocked out Grant Dawson, with like a switch stance straight left, I believe it was. Jalin Turner is another dude that's got a lot of pop on his shots. Definitely a harder puncher than Bobby Green. Bobby Green's probably a little bit more technical, but I would say Jalin Turner is good enough to definitely contend with him on the feet. He's definitely the more powerful dude, and he's definitely the longer dude. The odds on this fight, and I'm sorry I did not start off with them. Odds on this fight, Bobby Green is a plus 185 underdog. Jalin Turner comes in at minus 225 as the favorite. I feel like if you were a betting man, this is a fight to probably just stay away from, or wait to see if Jalin Turner even makes weight. Again, if he makes the 156 mark, he's going to be pretty depleted, and Bobby Green may have a lot of success. Live bet this maybe. If Bobby Green wins the second round, or he's starting to win the second round, maybe live bet this. If we see Jalin Turner flag a little bit, Bobby Green is a dude that can be hurt. He has been knocked out before, but he is typically pretty durable. Same thing as Jalin Turner. He's a dude that can be hurt. He can be buzzed. He got buzzed up a bit against Hooker, got knocked out against Vicente Luque. That was up a weight class, but still, I really like Bobby Green, and maybe I'll just pick him to will this into existence because of Bobby Green at 37, I believe he is, a late career run up the rankings at 155 is super impressive. And this is mostly a bet based on Jalin Turner. This is also probably a stupid fight to take for Bobby Green, because what if the Athletic Commission pulls this? If I were Bobby Green, I would have said yes to a dude that I know could make weight. But Jalin Turner is a dude in the rankings to where if Bobby Green takes a loss, he kind of probably holds his spot in the rankings. So that's maybe why he did it. Either way, give me Bobby Green. Give me Bobby Green to win the second half of the second round and the third round, and it'd be a very close fight. And Bobby Green has lost a lot of close fights, so that's pretty stupid to pick Bobby Green in a close fight. But I'm thinking weight cut also may impact Jalin Turner's defense. Maybe it'll also impact his volume. Bobby Green is coming in off a full camp. He's highly motivated. This is the best he's really ever done in his career. And Bobby Green's fought everyone. He's not going to be scared of Jalin Turner. Maybe he'll go land some straight shots and hurt him. Maybe he can put him on the back foot. We'll see. Give me Bobby Green to win a very close split decision. All right, moving on to the final fight we're going to talk about. This is a fight I'm actually kind of hyped on, even though both dudes are coming off of not very good performances. We have Rob Font versus Deiveson Figueiredo. Give you the odds. Rob Font is a slight favorite, coming at -135. Deiveson Figueiredo is coming in at +114, +115, however you want to call it. Rob Font is coming off of a pretty embarrassing but short notice loss to Corey Sandhagen. Prior to that, he knocked out the highly touted prospect Adrian Yanez in a barnyard brawl. He did lose via unanimous decision to Cheeto. Don't know how he survived that fight. Same thing could be said about the Jose Aldo fight. Don't know how he survived that fight. All before that, he's got wins against Cody Garbrandt, Marlon Moraes, both decent wins, but not the best. Ricky Simon is a good win. Sergio Pettis is a great win. He did lose to Rafael Assunção. Thomas Almeida was an okay win at the point. He did lose via submission. His only loss via finish in the UFC was to Pedro Munoz. That was back in 2017. He has wins over Douglas Silva de Andrade. That's a really good win, even though he's not many people know about him. He's a powerhouse. Matt Schnell, that's another pretty damn good win. And he's got wins against guys like George Roop, did lose to John Lineker. You move on to Deiveson Figueiredo. Okay, we all know about his 4 fights with Brandon Moreno. Draw, loss, win, loss. Prior to that, some violence. Deiveson Figueiredo was violent through COVID. From 2019 and 2020 were violent years for Deiveson Figueiredo. I mean, his brawl with Pantoja, winning a brawl with Pantoja in 2019, fucking impressive. His submission choke of Tim Elliott, pretty good win. But his 2 finishes against Joseph Benavidez, where one of them, Joseph Benavidez, like woke up screaming and you could hear him in the background, is something that I'll never forget. The submission guillotine against Alex Perez was awesome. And then his Brandon Moreno saga was fun, was great. I think it both took a lot. I think those 4 fights took a lot of those out of those guys' careers. The draw to Figueiredo in the first fight was crazy. The loss to Moreno in the second fight, where he kind of got outclassed. And then he beat Moreno in a very close fight in their third fight. And then the doctor stoppage, he did not look good in his final fight with Moreno. He got clipped up, was definitely getting buzzed on the feet. You could tell this 4-peat of fights was definitely taking a lot of wind out of Figueiredo's sails. He did not look good. He got busted up by Moreno pretty bad in their fourth fight. And he's a guy that is extremely explosive. He's an older guy. Let's see. He's 35 years old, finally moving up. He's only 5'5", but he's an athletic beast. He is a flyweight Yoel Romero when it comes to the athleticism, the explosibility, and just the damage. I mean, he's Manel Kape is drinking the same juice as him. Maybe it's the acai, even though Manel Kape's not Brazilian. But Figueiredo's got power. He's got great submissions, and when he's got a stranglehold, if he slaps his guillotine on anybody, they're tapping to that. Not many dudes. He's a great scrambler, but he just seems to be a guy that I think he did his best when he was training with Henry Cejudo, but he seems to be a guy that is just. I'm on the fence with him being 35. He's finally moved up. I think he should have moved up after he lost to Moreno after their second fight. After he got beat the way he did, I think he should have moved up way sooner. Either way, he's making his debut at bantamweight. I think he's gonna probably try to punch with Rob Font. And even Jose Aldo and Marlon Vera could not finish Rob Font. Rob Font is a dude that looked like he was wearing a Halloween mask after his Chito Vera fight. Got hurt so many times. I mean, the fight could have been stopped. His corner probably should have stopped it, but it's Tyson Chartier, and they don't stop fights in that camp. Ask Calvin Kattar and ask Max Holloway. I'm going to pick Rob Font, and I think it's going to look similar to the Adrian Yanez fight. I think Rob Font is a better combination puncher. He has more volume. I just don't see Figueiredo moving up a weight class to wrestle, even though he can wrestle and grapple. And if you watch the Sandhagen fight, that may be a path to victory for someone like Figgy in a fight like this. Because Figgy can wrestle. He's a good wrestler, but he's also got good striking. And I think he may try to move up a weight class and prove a point. And I don't know if that's going to be the best idea for him. Font is a decent anti-grappler. I know Sandhagen doesn't read as a grappler first guy, but Sandhagen is just such a technical beast, and he's such he just bleeds MMA to where like he's a guy that's going to anything he trains he's going to be good at. But Sandhagen is just an anomaly. Clearly, Rob Font is not the grappler that Sandhagen is. And that's why Sandhagen had so much success. But I don't think Figgy has the same gas tank and the same technical prowess and just the same hard-headedness to stick to a game plan that someone like Sandhagen had. And Sandhagen got injured in the fight, so that's why he really leaned on his grappling. Rob Font's got big hands. He hits hard. When he hits people, he tends to hurt them unless your name is Jose Aldo or Cheeto, especially Cheeto. You look at the striking numbers in that fight, and Cheeto was outlanded by like 100 significant strikes, and Cheeto didn't even look like that's just Cheeto. Cheeto is also an anomaly. Being a 35-year-old bantamweight that lost their last fight at flyweight, that had 4 fights with Brandon Moreno that were these crazy 2 stray cats in an alley fighting over, an empty can of tuna type fights. It's just going to look like the Adrian Yanez fight. I really think it's going to look like the Adrian Yanez fight. Give me Rob Font to finish Figueiredo in the last part of the second round. Think he's going to hurt him. I did not like the way that Figueiredo was reacting to shots at 125, and I think he's probably going to be confident of his chin at 135, but I think he's going to move up and get hit by probably the hardest puncher he's fought. And if Moreno was stinging him on the feet, I don't see why Font is not going to be able to buzz him. Font is not as quick as Moreno, but he's definitely just as crafty. He's a good combination puncher, and he definitely hits harder, and he has a longer reach. And he has a good fucking jab. Both of those, Moreno and Font both have a good jab. Both had a ton of success with their jab. Moreno had a ton of success with his jab against Figgy. Yeah, I think we're going to see a stoppage from Rob Font here. I think Figueiredo's debut at 135 is not going to go great. That's the show, guys. Again, thank you for being patient about my week off. Check the kick. Signs right there. Sherdog.com. Press all those buttons. Do all those things. Reach out to me in the comments because I respond to anyone that comments. So comment, subscribe to Sherdog. If you're listening to this, you're subscribed to Sherdog. But do all those stupid things. That's my social media right there. You can follow me. I'm mostly on Instagram, but wherever, right there. That's the show. Enjoy the fights, guys.